Hello, and welcome to Electrifying Growth, a podcast brought to you by Edison Partners. I'm Chris Sugden, managing partner here at Edison and your host. There are moments in a person or company's journey that are undeniably electric. The spark or sparks, if you will, that propel you or your company to new heights. With Electrifying Growth, we're here to have in-depth, real conversations with great leaders who have been there and done it before. Edison has been investing in high-growth technology companies for more than 35 years, and I have been here at Edison doing this investing piece for more than 20 years. We've led over 225 investments. We understand that it takes great leaders and visionaries to build market leaders. We are your support system, a CEO and management's entourage, if you will. Let's introduce this episode's guest. On today's episode of Electrifying Growth, we are really pleased to have a guest that has an incredibly unique career that spans entrepreneurship, corporate finance, private investing, and public service. Today, we have Stuart C. McWhorter, the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. That's a mouthful, otherwise known as TNECD, a role he has held since July 2022. Under his leadership, the Commission has spearheaded nearly 160 projects, generating over 21,700 job commitments and driving nearly $11 billion in capital investment in the state of Tennessee. Remarkably, over 28% of these initiatives have been fueled by foreign direct investment, showcasing Stuart's global vision and strategic acumen. However, Stuart's influence extends far beyond economic development. As a co-founder and chairman of Clayton Associates, he invested and brought over 25 years of expertise in entrepreneurship and early stage development, helping nurture countless ventures to success. In 2019, he transitioned to public service, joining Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's administration as the Commissioner of the Department of Finance and Administration. There he led the drafting of 2 state budgets, co-chaired the governor's healthcare modernization task force, and directed the Tennessee Unified Command Group in managing the state's COVID-19 response. Needless to say that successful economic results are part of Stuart's legacy. In addition, Stuart previously served as the CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and chairman of the board of directors of Nashville-based First Bank Financial Corporation.
Stuart McWhorter, great to see you, and thanks so much for joining Electrifying Growth today.
Hey, Chris. How are you today?
I'm great. The heat wave is everyone's complaining, but I'll take it all day long. The ball goes further on the golf course.
That's true.
So we've gotten to know each other a little bit. You were really welcoming as we were talking before this call, and just in general. Edison, we'll talk about, is set up our own residency, if you will, in the great state of Tennessee. So yeah, the cards are stacked in favor of this conversation being quite positive. But as I mentioned in the opener, that it's not like it's just now happened, but the technology sector is truly, it's been coming, but it's truly arrived, I feel like, in the state of Tennessee. And I feel like the state's really been not only ready for it, like it has with other industries, but its time has come. So with that in mind, as a backdrop, being the head of economic development and touching so many different bases, I'd love to maybe talk about your role and how you think about working with Governor Lee and frankly, all the other leaders throughout the state.
Yeah. Well, first of all, great to see you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about things that are happening in our state. There's a lot going on, and I know we could probably have a long conversation about it, but I would just say I'm fortunate to be in this role as commissioner. You know, it's a function of my relationship with the governor. Primarily, I've known him for over 20 years. And as there was some transition in our department a few years ago, he reached out to me. I actually served as Commissioner of Finance and Administration in the first couple of years of the governor's first term, and then stepped out during COVID. I helped start a few companies, and then he called me to come back into this role. And it really is, it's a fun job. It's an honor to serve. And really, at the end of the day, we are, for the most part, the marketing and recruiting arm for the state of Tennessee. We get to represent that brand, that Tennessee brand, which is extremely strong. Thankfully, we've been fortunate as a state for decades to have, from a state's perspective, great leadership in the governor's office and our legislature, very business-minded decisions that are made, whether it's tax, whether it's regulatory, et cetera. But that's essentially the role that we play. We are a department of about 100 people. We're one of the smaller departments in the state. And, I spend a majority of my time, I'm in our office, and I'm not here very much.
I was going to say you're on the road most of the time, right?
I'm on the road visiting one of or a handful of our 95 counties on a pretty regular basis. And certainly, we travel and meet with companies and other consultants really around the globe. And it's just an honor to be able to represent the Tennessee brand in that way.
I'm going to follow up a little later with the business aspects of that brand, since that is what you do obviously all the time. But how about the personal aspects of the Tennessee brand, if you will? Because if you're trying to convince someone to move, it may or may not be equal parts depending on the target. But I personally think it is equal parts. What's my life going to be like if I live here? Obviously, what's my business going to be like? So what's the brand from a personal perspective? We'll come back to the business in a minute.
Yeah. So, I think I was speaking to a group earlier this morning about this. And, we have as a state, whether it's tax code, whether it's regulatory code, business friendly environment that we have had for a number of years, decades, actually, conservative, fiscally conservative, all these things. And then, of course, our department, we have programs, incentive programs that we are allowed to offer to companies, whether they're expanding or relocating to the state. So we have all these pieces in place. We work with our local governments as well. They have local incentives. At the end of the day, after every time we high five each other and say, we've won this job, I'll ask the CEO or the senior team, what was the difference maker in making a decision to commit to our state, invest your dollars and hire Tennesseans for your company. Every time it's about the people, and they'll tell you they feel welcome here. This is a place that they want to raise a family. It's a place where they want their kids to go to school and make friends, lifelong friends. And so that speaks to really how Tennessee operates as a state, really. And, whether it's at the state level or at the community level, it's the people. Everybody's willing to work together, help each other out. We're the volunteer state for a reason. I think it literally is, ingrained in our DNA, after many years and centuries of this great state. And so we have these conversations often with our team about trying to put all the right incentives and packages together. And it's good. You have to, because you got to compete. All the other states are doing it too. But that's not ultimately what makes these companies make these decisions. So it's just a way of life here. And it's the way we do business. And you're probably seeing a little bit. You've made the decision to live and invest in our state as well. And there's reasons for that, not just because of all the things I said from a business side, but really more from a personal side. And that just, is something that we hear often.
Yeah, a bit of a loaded question or stacked deck in favor, so to speak, because as you said, it's been now over 3 years. It was a personal move first. My daughter found a wonderful school in Chattanooga, and we just decided we didn't want to have her board. So only because it's such a big rivalry, I'll give Baylor a shout out, not the other school, but you know how that goes down here. But I think then the most recent news, as you know, and we were kind of speaking at our annual meeting a year ago, but we hadn't yet opened up a door, and now we have a full-blown office, and a few other partners have come down. And
this is awesome.
Yeah, we're 50-50 between New Jersey and Tennessee and Nashville. But I think what you said is, I'll veer because I was going to ask you a question, different one. But since you said it, the spirit of partnership, volunteer, welcoming, it does stick out to me. And I've probably said this a couple different times in different forms. Maybe some will say, you keep saying that. There is a cooperative nature to the state. And I say that because, like I said, I'm a resident of Chattanooga, have an office in Nashville, and Nashville's clearly a very dominant, if you will, city relative to what's going on and how big it is. But Memphis on one end, for those who are geography lesson of Tennessee geography, on the western end, and East Tennessee welcoming Knoxville, and of course Oak Ridge is up there, and Chattanooga's eastern, but also south. Just kind of talk about why is that? And obviously you can only handle so many more new entrants into Nashville as it is. So there's one element, but it hasn't really felt like a competition to me. It's been more like, just get down here.
It is. I think, I guess first I'll start with, you named off some of the larger metropolitan cities in our state, from, Memphis to Knoxville, Chattanooga, even up to Clarksville. Clarksville's growing, the northern middle part of our state that borders Kentucky, all the way up to northeast Tennessee, Johnson City, Tri-Cities, Johnson City area. All of those, from an economic development perspective, all parts of our state have seen just significant growth. And, you can point to different reasons for that over the last, at least in my job in the last 2 years, but certainly going back to the governor's term over the last 5.5 years, we've seen just some significant advancements, whether it's with workforce, whether it's with infrastructure, sites. We have a whole site selection program in place where they're certified shovel-ready sites. So that allows companies to make decisions and move quickly in terms of making their decisions. But, what we found is Nashville being dominant city and contributes a lot, to our state revenues. We're a predominantly sales tax revenue state, no income tax. sales taxes, and a lot of it's driven right here in Nashville. But everybody's a big believer when things happen in Nashville, there is a ripple effect. And it can rip, there are waves, some are small, some are larger, but they can actually make its way to each end of the state. And as much as some of these chambers like to compete with each other on certain projects, they all realize that, yeah, Chattanooga may win a project, but Nashville's still going to benefit in some way. There's just not been a lot of animosity. It really, truly is a partnership. We say this often, we can't do the job that we do without the local partners on the ground. And it's amazing how they work together. And they'll oftentimes be competing on things and they realize they may not get it. So they want to help the other community at least beat, another state that we might be competing with to get the project for sure.
And it's not negative campaigning, but what I've seen in being in the Northeast so long, I'll call it more sharp elbows around relative to that sort of spirit of cooperation. Let's make sure it stays or wins, as opposed to this is the place that's got to win. So that just sticks out. And to your point about welcoming, I frankly think those who are from especially the Northeast, probably think it differently, that am I going to be okay here? And it's the South and all that. And I got to tell you, Southern hospitality is a real thing, speaking as someone who's new. Relative to your own background, kind of pivoting a little bit, you had great success as an operator, as an entrepreneur, an investor, and now in public service. Just speak a little bit of that arc and how has one helped the other, particularly now that this is a cumulative effect of now being in this, having done all those other things.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question. I've had a lot of jobs and sometimes that gets frowned upon. It wasn't by design necessarily. When I finished up grad school, I got a master's in hospital administration. I grew up around that as a kid. My father was at HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, most of his career. So I was just around it. I saw that he had a lot of joy in his work and liked what he did. And I thought, he likes what he does, so maybe I should do this because I like it too. And, I did that for just a very short period of time. And he retired after I got out of grad school. He retired from HCA and he said, he was in his early 60s at the time. And he said, I think we have an opportunity to invest in some talent in this city. There's a lot of healthcare, very smart, capable, passionate executives in this town that I'm willing to back. I'm willing to be a seed investor in their idea. And we literally started our venture firm, Clayton Associates, on that premise. And neither one of us had any venture background at all, venture capital background at all. And we just had to learn our way through it. But doing that for 20 years with him, and then I took a hiatus, went and worked at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, which is our local Nashville incubator. It's a public-private partnership here locally where we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, helping them launch their businesses. And that was a great experience for me. And then when Dad passed away, I went back to our family business and just decided that I was not going to do that anymore. I didn't want to do it without him. And our fund is FCA Venture Partners is the name of our fund. It's still going strong with our team. And that was about the time the governor decided that he was going to run for governor. And I've known him for 20 years. And he said, hey, I'm going to do this and would love for you to be involved. And so I was his campaign finance chair. And after he won the primary, he invited me to join him. And so here I am now. Again, I was finance commissioner over the budget the first 2 years. But really being in this role, which is what I thought he was going to ask me to do initially, makes a lot of sense. Being around businesses, entrepreneurs, it's interesting as we look at companies that are looking to relocate or expand these larger projects with a lot of CapEx. There is an element to working with them to try to decide, does the state, with our incentives, we're essentially investing taxpayer dollars
in this company. Yeah.
In this company, not in the company, but in their success, that they're going to go and hire the people that they say they're going to hire. And so you have to have the ability to assess the possibilities of success. You have to assess the possibilities of these companies fitting in with other industry and other businesses in our state. I mean, I always say we're putting this puzzle together and trying to knit, and place pieces where it makes sense across the entire state, across what is probably about a dozen verticals that we have a lot of concentration in, everything from ceramics to automotive to, healthcare and financial services, media, all those. And so we try to be very thoughtful around that as well. I mean, they want to come to Tennessee, and we want them to come to Tennessee. We want to provide that opportunity for them too, but we also want to understand, one, will you be successful? And two, does it fit sort of the overall strategy that was set way before me. My job is just to make sure that we continue to march along, but that's a lot of what's happening here. And I think having the background that I've had helps a lot. And the last thing I'd say is I started my career off in physician recruitment and physician relations. And so I worked for a hospital that had about 600 physicians on their medical staff. It's a large hospital in Birmingham. And my job, coming pretty much right out of grad school, my job was to work with the medical staff. And as you can imagine, a variety, very diverse set of personalities across these specialties. Well, what I've found is that there was a lot of lessons learned during that period of time and how that applies to working with our legislature. We have a body here that I highly respect that bring different perspectives to the table, whether they're representing a district from the Senate side or the House side. And we work with them daily on a variety of things on behalf of the governor. And, you get a lot of different personalities with different needs, and they have different questions based on, the districts they represent. So you have to be prepared to handle the diverse conversation that's going to happen.
Sort of opinions, backgrounds,
all of it,
perspectives.
Yeah. So that, I liken it to just working with a medical staff in a hospital because there's just some similarities there.
I know. I believe I know just what you mean. There's a lot of certainty too.
There is.
So, as we talked about, Tennessee's just on an absolute roll, and we're actually recording this. A shout out to the Vols taking on the College World Series last night.
Big win.
But in terms of a role, you look at all the different announcements and companies and frankly, diverse industries, such a healthcare powerhouse, as you mentioned, in terms of beyond music, what Northern Tennessee and Nashville is known for, but whether it's mobility, batteries, EVs, I don't think people know how big Volkswagen is down in Chattanooga, that this is their U.S. headquarters, and pretty amazing. Advanced manufacturing, nuclear education, and of course, a big one that I think it's still surprised I tell people they don't know it, that Oracle made their announcement to relocate. So pick one or all and talk about the diversity that you've been able to successfully help foster, not you, but you as the lead of this commission, certainly, but talk about that diversity. It's clearly thoughtful and you're not just looking to be one thing.
That's right. Well, we think diversity is key for a lot of obvious reasons, which I don't need to explain, but I do think we've got, give or take, 10 to 12 clusters, where you see some concentration across the state. And where I go when I talk about that is workforce. I think about our higher education institutions, our research institutions, local partners that are working on programming that are very specific to industry. We're now working with, as an example, we're with our technical schools across Tennessee, TCAT, with industry to help curate customized curriculum based on industry needs, again, along, several very concentrated verticals in our state. But you mentioned a few of them. I think the big one for our state, obviously, is automotive. And 3 or 4 decades ago, Nissan made a commitment to the state of Tennessee and Smyrna to build a plant, significant investment, thanks to, Lamar Alexander, who was our governor at the time, was really responsible for bringing them to our state. And that created this environment for automotive in our state. Later, obviously now, from Nissan to where we are today, soon to be 4 OEMs with Ford and Blue Oval City and West Tennessee. And we obviously have GM and you mentioned Volkswagen. And you think about, we're one of 3 I think it's 3 states that has at least 4 automotive manufacturers, OEMs. And so obviously the tier 1 and tier 2 supplier network, you think about all the other ancillary businesses that wrap around what would be an enormous production facility in 4 locations, has just created this large cluster. And we're very appreciative of that from a manufacturing standpoint now, with advanced manufacturing, particularly with electric vehicles, with the battery technology. I know there's lots of data out there, surveys talking about EVs and where it is today. And what we always have to rely on ultimately at the end of the day are our customers, the Volkswagen, for instance, or GM, saying, hey, you read the headlines and you hear what people are saying about EVs, but so where are you with it? And they're still continuing, they have the ability to obviously maneuver and tweak their strategy. But they're investing billions of dollars in this technology. So I've got to believe that it's coming. It's likely not coming at the pace that maybe folks thought a year or 2 ago. That all to say, we want to continue to support that cluster. But I would also tell you that, we do have, the ceramic and tile industry in Tennessee is extremely strong, very unique. We have a natural resource with ball clay in the upper West Tennessee region of our state. There is for a lot of reasons, these companies, international businesses from, Brazilian companies to Italian companies that are making significant investments in our state from a supply chain perspective. But I think there's a lot of things we do well in Tennessee, but we're also really lucky to live in a state geographically, because you think if you looked at the map of the South of the United States of the Southeast, we're right in the middle.
Yeah, it's the crossroads. There's no doubt.
It is everything, whether it's by rail or road or river, and by air, because the Nashville International Airport is growing by leaps and bounds right now. So the tile industry has really blossomed over the last 10 years. And there's a reason for that, not just because we happen to have available land or available workforce. There was a natural resource component and there's a logistic component to it. So, I can go on and talk more about all these industries and clusters, but I think ultimately at the end of the day for us, we want to diversify the industry. We also want to get, as part of diversification of industry, it allows small businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovators to connect. I'm a strong believer that those that are trying to start things and grow their business, they need to find the customer base, the people and companies that are willing to buy their product or buy their service. So, why not do it locally? Why, if we're going to create businesses and an environment for companies to start here in Tennessee, then why not bring the best brands to our state to allow them to partner to help grow their business? That's a big ecosystem that you're trying to throw fertilizer on. And I think we've got the ability to do that through diversification of industry.
That's great. This is not meant to be contentious in any way. And I certainly don't want to go political. I'm curious how you think about the vote with Volkswagen, the unionization. It seemed certainly the governor had a point of view and should.
Yeah, right.
And at the same token, as you mentioned with Lamar, it was exactly not that to get him there, right?
Right. That's right.
Do you think it's a ripple, throwing a stone in the water, or do you think it's a one-off?
I don't know. It's, there's certainly been a lot of talk about it, not just here in Tennessee, but nationally speaking. It was interesting. Volkswagen has their vote. They're union approved. And then, Alabama, Mercedes-Benz has theirs and they defeat it. So that was counter to what, had just happened, obviously, in Chattanooga. So, I think ultimately our role in our department is that we want to support businesses that are bringing new jobs to the state, high quality jobs. And we define that as a wage above the county median wage. And so we're tasked with that. We try to do our best to pick the winners, and not in those cases. Obviously, Volkswagen's been in our state for a long time and continuing to be a great partner in our state. Obviously, the governor spoke against the union vote. We certainly support the governor in that regard, but ultimately, Volkswagen's here. And so we just got to figure out how we're going to work with them and continue to support them in the long run.
Be positive about it. Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think about my own personal experience. And again, I'll careful not to veer too much into politics because it's such a thorny subject these days. But my experience is the diversity of opinion, quite frankly. And I actually think Chattanooga actually is particularly that way. It's not, yes, it's a red state, but it's not nearly as deep red as people think. At least that's been my experience. It's sort of like your opinion's welcome here. I've got a point of view, but the point is, it is not sort of only one way to think, which I really appreciate.
Well, and, I'd say too, with respect to Chattanooga, I feel that Chattanooga is prime for phenomenal opportunity. There's, again, just from where I sit, working with both the city and county mayor, the chamber, there's some fantastic community leaders in Chattanooga. My father's from Chattanooga. I used to hang out there a lot when I was a kid, and they are on the cusp of some great economic development opportunities. And I'm excited about, where they are. And again, you would talk about logistics. And they are a logistics city. They kind of cut their teeth as a city on logistics. And so I feel that they're prime. They're really in a good position to be smart about how they want to grow and bring in industry and partner with industry. So I'm excited about what's happening down there.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. When you look at supply chain and particularly the trucking industry, it's pretty amazing. A lot of people just don't realize that. Back to that crossroads comment. Go back to your personal journey. It sounds like your father was a huge mentor, influence in your life.
He was, yes.
And maybe there's another mentor too, but maybe it's your dad. What advice sticks with you? I like to get kind of behind the personal or the professional persona and understand what makes someone tick in these discussions. And maybe your father's advice was the one you sort of sticks out. Maybe there's another mentor in your life, but share with the audience the things that you thought about as you guided your career from an early age.
Well, my dad was a very unique situation. My parents divorced when I was young. And so I was in Atlanta at the time, and he moved to Nashville after about a year or two after they divorced. And so I stayed in Atlanta, but I was up in Nashville quite a bit. But he was very intentional about being involved in my life. And we really had a very unique relationship, father-son relationship. And so, when I finished up school and had the opportunity to work with him, I actually thought after I got my master's in hospital administration that I'd go work at HCA. And he was like, no, you're not doing that. You're not going to work. We can work together one day, but you don't need to come work for the company like that. And it's just too close for comfort. So when we thought about creating Clayton Associates, that opportunity to really work with him provided me an opportunity to have a different type of relationship with him. And he, at first it was a little challenging for me, but as I grew into the role and he let go of some of the reins, he learned how to work with me. And we actually went out and brought a consultant in to kind of help smooth over some of the things that bothered him and bothered me. And
naturally, there's going to be some conflict, right?
And it was some of the best money we spent because he told my dad a few things and told me a few things that we both didn't realize we were doing.
That's great because I think coaching we can always use coaches. Don't get too far in life to not keep learning.
Yeah, we can't fall in love with ourselves so much that we don't see what's going on. And we both realized what we were doing. And so anyway, I was fortunate to work with him do that for 20 years together. Dad was very relational. He emphasized the importance of relationship, encouraged me to build relationships. He was always a big believer in finding a mentor. He had several in his career, but he had one in particular that he felt that really set his career path. He was very supportive of me doing that at an early age, and I did. I've had several in my life as well, including him, but I had others as well that did the same thing for me. And I encourage younger folks that come and speak to me and ask me the question, what I can do to position myself for success. I always tell them, find a mentor, find somebody that's willing to invest in you. They don't want anything from you except your success. So he was a big believer in that. And, the other thing he talked a lot about was, act like an owner no matter what you do. He just said, go to work every day as if you own the business because you'll probably work harder, smarter. You'll likely enjoy, what you're doing. And he would always say, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And he was very fortunate in his career to have that. Those are some of the things he would share often with not only me, but many others.
It's timeless. It's timeless advice. So back to your day job, if you will, and let's play a little hypothetical. I'm a startup CEO. Maybe I got a couple employees, a handful. Why am I coming to Tennessee? Not so much where, because we know we just talked about lots of places to go that are great cities on their own. Kind of what's your, again, young company? Because I know you got to scale all the way up, and that's what really can move jobs. But you get the young company call every now and then too. How do you pitch them?
So I would tell them that everything that you need to start and grow a business is right here in Tennessee. And whether it's regardless of the industry, there may be some exceptions to that. There may be some industry folks or a startup business that is very specific that, might be a challenge, but I would bet that the majority of opportunities in that, as in your scenario, would fit very nicely here in the state. It's a great place to live and raise a family. The cost of living compared to other parts of the U.S. is significantly lower. You get access to a workforce as you're looking for talent. It's here. If you are looking to partner with research institutions, whether it's, a four-year institution or we talked about, Oak Ridge, you have Oak Ridge National Labs, you've got Arnold Air Force Base, you've got so many things here in our state that the doors are open to partner with, particularly if you're a startup that you need that kind of support, it's here. Logistically, the Nashville International Airport is adding more daily flights than most airports in the country and looking at more and more directs, international directs. So we're broadening our reach at the airport. That's a significant, no matter where you live, really. And you could, hour and a half away, you can make that drive to BNA and you can get pretty much anywhere in the world in a day or less. So I could go on. I mean, I will say this, I've been part of the venture community for, call it 30 years now. And I know that when we started our firm, there was maybe 3 venture firms. There was no, what I would call private equity. There was all earlier stage venture companies. And now I don't even know what the count is, but there's more. I mean, you guys, you're an example of the types of investors, whether it's the venture investors or private equity and even some family offices. There've been a lot of family offices created here as well or moved here. The amount of talent that's looking at opportunities, and not only looking at opportunities, but investing in Tennessee businesses has gone up quite a bit.
Exponential.
So access to capital, has gotten much better. It's not perfect. We still have, I actually think we have a long way to go.
There's a long road for sure, which is what we like. We certainly aren't the trailblazer you were, Clayton, but there's a huge momentum. But the thing that we like is we put a significant group, and there's the onesie twosie to figure it out. And they go, wait, this is pretty cool. I guess I was a little bit that way on coming to Chattanooga, but there's no doubt that it's still underserved, which we love. But what's really cool is that early communities continue to have a lot of momentum. And so where we invest our stage, we're sort of like welcome, because this is a gap that we're filling. And that's back to my point about, it's been really nice that you want to meet somebody, here you go. How can I help? That's been the spirit, which you give to get. And so we try to start there too. So how can we be helpful? But it's been definitely a really obvious, and we invest in healthcare IT, and our enterprise side supply chain is really critical. So to say it checks some boxes, there's no doubt about that.
No, that was, I think, a great move that you guys made. We're certainly glad you're here. And I know that y'all will continue to grow here in the state and do great things. I think it makes a lot of sense, and happy for y'all to do that.
So a parting question, which I always like to, because this sort of kind of cliche, if you will, but if I knew then what I know now, you're 25 or 30 years old, what would you have done? I like to say, not so much regret, but twice as much of, if you knew how important it would be to your success or to other success. What would you tell the 25? Frankly, my son's only 21, but I always like to kind of take it from that perspective. I want to get other people to help share great advice with him.
Yeah.
So
first of all, I think I've been very blessed to be able to do what I've been able to do. I've found that as many jobs that I've had over my career has really helped me become, from a career perspective, being able to do what I can do today because of that.
Diversity.
Yeah, diversity of opportunity and experiences. I think that, what I was told at an early age that I didn't understand, that I tell particularly young adults coming out of college, or, maybe they're in the first 2 or 3 or 4 years of their first job, that are just trying to get more counsel on what to do. I didn't like it. I didn't like to hear it when I was their age, and I didn't like to do it, but it's just grinding out the stuff that isn't fun. It's just not fun. And maybe particularly if you're talking to somebody who's in a job for a year or two and they're like, I don't like this. I was like, good. You're not supposed to like it because you don't want to be there forever. Like, what are you learning as a result of that? Because for me, grinding out, doing a bunch of stuff that I didn't like to do, helped me determine what I really like to do. And, sometimes people say, don't sweat the small stuff. A lot of people my age say that now, and I get that. I am actually a big believer in sweating out the small stuff.
To create that grit, right?
Yeah. It's like you want to be a little uncomfortable. Don't get complacent. And I think part of it for me, even today, I'll be 56 this year. I still got fire in the belly to do stuff. Like I love what I do. And now I'm already thinking about, in this role as commissioner, what can we do differently that we've been doing as a department for a number of years? Now, what's the next thing that we can really affect? I love that part.
I just great advice, grit, resilience, do that hard stuff. Our namesake Edison was famous for it looks like hard work because it's dressed in a pair of overalls. And I can relate to that. And frankly, to your point, work harder so you don't have to do that job you didn't like sometimes is also part of that mantra too. So that's awesome. Well, listen, we are pleased that the state has been so welcoming to us. You're kind with your time. I know you got a lot of other folks trying to get on your calendar. So thank you very much for joining Electrifying Growth, Commissioner Stuart McWhorter, the Tennessee Economic Development Commission. And what a great job you all have done, and keep up the momentum.
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks again for you and your firm and your partners committing to our state, moving here, living here. Thank you for having me on, and look forward to seeing all the great work you guys are going to do too.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of Electrifying Growth. A special thanks to this week's guest for sharing their time and insight. For more resources, inspiration, and a look inside the Edison Partners network, sign up for our newsletter at www.edisonpartners.com. Click on the Stay in the Know button in the top right corner of our webpage. Thank you again.